I know the right thing on. Oops. Oh, that's a lot of damage. Hello, friends. I want to do a little bit of an update, as it's been requested many times, of the Demonspawn class that I've been playing for the past few days since the game launched in our Blood Pact. Been having a lot of fun, and I've played this class before back in Season 6. I would consider Demonspawn the most powerful caster in the game, if not the best feeling overall. I assume it's right next to Marksman Drone Gunner, which the scaling of it's not as extreme or abrupt or sudden as some of the Marksman Gunner things I've seen, but Demonspawn, when you look at a class that is just balanced and received only buffs this season, it has always been extremely strong for both AoE clear, single target, and just staying alive. So let's talk a little bit about what makes Demonspawn so good. One thing is its absolutely absurd single target capabilities. So what I want to do is I want to go through the trees and explain a little bit of how to play this class and what you're going to be doing at endgame when you do get there. And then I'll go over how you level it, as leveling it is pretty straightforward. It's a very easy class to level, probably one of the smoothest in the game. If you run any level of arcane damage filter, you're going to have a great time. Let's go ahead and talk about our skill trees. So I actually have 3 different setups, and they're going to depend on your gear level, but first off, we'll talk about single target. Single target is based entirely off of bone fragments, as bone fragments is a projectile skill that can shotgun the closer you are to a target. What we're going to look at here for our tree is the optimal setup that I have, and this can vary, and maybe it changes as some new tech comes out. This is what I found is the highest damage. So we want to increase our projectile count here. We're going to get a chance to unleash additional bone fragments here, and this is in service of moving up 2 points in bloodshed up here to Demon's Grip. Demon's Grip causes bone fragments to orbit a target on hit for a short period of time, dealing additional damage to nearby monsters. This ability is really powerful as it will help with a lot of our shotgunning, and it increases just the damage of our bone fragments. And then of course we have our lovely increased damage to bleeding, which got buffed and is now at 100% at max level. And then I have an extra point over here. This is basically just for a little bit of extra damage, and this is my very end game tree. If you're a little less geared, I would move this down to Bone Cannonade. The other aspect of the single target tree is going to be Bone Storm. Bone Storm, all we care about is the fact that it gives us bleed and arcane break. You're going to get permanent Bone Storm, you're going to max out bleed, you're going to max out arcane break, you're going to max out its size and its projectile, so it's constantly ticking. The other aspect of this is it helps with cartilage buildup. Cartilage buildup is a stacking effect. Once it hits 10, it explodes, doing a ton of arcane damage to a target. As you can see there on my list, it's at 1,000,000 at my current gear level. Though we don't max this, it's still a very high scaling effect, and it does a ton of damage. The combination of us shotgunning this and this hitting at the same time and shredding, it's a lot of damage. You can, if you have anything that does burning effects like caffeinated coffee or any item, you can apply burning using Impale, but that's only if you have something that helps with burning. As for our skill tree, we're obviously maxing bone fragments. We're going to max single out, as this is purely for single target. We're going to max ominous aura for more arcane damage, and we're going to max demonic presence. Now for the rest of your points, I throw 1 point in bone barrage, and I use bone nova. This is my bone nova tree. Go max proj. We go across here to pick up nova bones that lets you do everything with bone barrage without a cooldown. We just pick up the nodes to travel there. We max out our bounce between monsters, and I get a little bit of points for bouncing off terrain. This is just an AoE clear skill. It's good for like the heads on Damien, little monsters. It's nice AoE clear if you're just like encountering small monsters while you're in your single target tree. Other than that, mana shield is a must for me. This basically keeps you alive if you take any hits and is essentially our tankiest engine. And then Mana Devour in case the fight runs on too long or you take too many hits and need to get your mana back. This allows you to not run a mana potion. While it does run the cost of you actually casting this spell, and you can still run a mana potion to increase your uptime on damage, if you want to try to do more of a burst setup, you just run this. I don't see any point in not having a point in this with how Mana Shield functions. The other factor is Blood Bolts. I'm not going to go over this more than once, but this is included in every build that I have. It is for a little extra juice that you take Wave of Blood. At level 3, it's 18% faster cast rate, some movement speed, and 45% arcane damage. When you fire this out, it's just a wave of blood on the ground, and it puts a little trail you can stand on that persists for a few seconds, and it just gives you a 5-second buff that does all these things. You get kind of used to pressing it constantly, and it's mostly useful in boss fights when you're trying to get the most out of your damage or running around for an intermission. And movement speed's always nice if you don't have teleport yet. Let's talk about our 2 AoE options. So the first AoE option you're going to use, and you're most likely going to use this with the Blood of Abaddon's staff. This is a staff that you can usually get early by target farming in Act 7, or you can look at getting this from the market if you're playing on trade. Staff has insane extra skill to Blood Surge as well as Blood Tendrils, amping up the damage massively, especially at low gear levels. This lets you farm from a safe distance while spiking blood all over the screen. It can be pretty frame intensive if your gear is not up to snuff, but it's really good. We do the same thing with Bone Storm we did in the single target tree. It's just for shred and bleed in case you run into a rare, turn it on, run over to them. Bone Fragments has the same thing, and it's just in case you run into a single target and you kind of want to get a little more single target damage on something without swapping trees. And then kind of the same thing for Bone Barrage. I just had a spare point. You could probably pull this point out entirely. Skill-wise, you're maxing Blood Surge, Blood Tendrils, Ominous Aura, and Demonic Presence. You just want as much of these skills as possible because of how much they benefit from all skills and the percent scaling. Same thing with Mana Shield, Mana Devour, always good to have. It's a defensive layer. All my extra points, since this is mostly an AoE speed build, go into Ossification. This is just for more movement speed and defense. If you have Teleport and you don't care about defense and movement speed, what you can do is you can take those extra points and you can put them into a synergy. Most likely you'd put them into Gut Spread. Even though that doesn't really help you because it's Blood Bolts, you can put them into Gut Spread just to get more synergy damage, or you can put them into Blood Bolts or Blood Demons. Blood Demons is a pretty decent choice because you get a little tiny bit of passive extra damage, though it's not much. As for how we do Blood Surge, well, we're going to put 2 in the AoE, up here to the burn damage. We're going to have Asphyxiating Vessels. I personally like to get as many points in Vein Pressure as you can, but this is some flex points you could put elsewhere. You could put them in the burn to try to get some burn chance. Probably the most powerful node in here is Rays of Blood, as it causes blood surges to proc out from targets you're hitting, and that is a crazy graphic that will sometimes lag you if there's too many targets, but does insane damage and helps with clear. And then Decrease Movement Diminish from Demon Wings is awesome. Main thing is this one increases tick frequency of Blood Surge. This massively increases how much damage the beam does while on targets. And we'll look at this ability in a bit. Blood Tendrils just causes more damage chaining from it. So this is purely an AoE clear skill. Its single target damage is terrible, though once you get enough damage, it can be okay. The main power of Blood Surge is multiple targets grouped close together. What that causes is multiple chains and tons of damage spiking out for some of your nodes. This is what you use with Blood of Abaddon, and use it early. Once you start getting into Inferno, depending on your gear, you can use it, but we'll talk about the next AoE tree for that. I will say the way Blood Surge has always worked, and Blood of Abaddon has helped it along, is it's one of the best clearing skills in the game, as you will off-screen multiple monsters. The only issue is the damage value isn't super high. If you get like overloaded dice for this ability, it would be crazy, but that's pretty unlikely and unrealistic to expect. It's got crazy range, it's really good, but it does require you to kind of gear equivalently or over the content to make it super efficient. But with Blood of Abaddon, you'll be able to easily speed Hell 5 with it. Now let's talk about Bone Barrage. This is actually my AoE tree, and this tree is made better by one specific item, but you can't run it without that item, and I'm going to suggest you expect not to have that item because it's very expensive and very rare. But what we do with Bone Barrage, this is the same tree I kind of showed off when we were looking at the single target for my supplemental AoE. It's a bunch of proj, we move up to travel here, we get the chain between monsters, we're just moving along here to get Nova Bones, gives us more damage, projectile speed, and takes the cooldown off Bone Barrage. This as well for our terrain bounce, very powerful even at 8%. This tree is flexible, do whatever gives you the most damage for your current gear. Sometimes you're going to get a little bit more damage from adding in terrain bounce if you're mostly in hallways farming dungeons. You could even look at explosive density when you don't have enough gear to really just get your oomph from the chaining. There's a couple options here. I tended to like the chaining the most because I'm going for pure AoE when I use this. We'll show off the ability in a few, but it basically allows you to just spam projectiles in a giant circle around you. It feels like Spark from Path of Exile or things like that. We're going to max out Bone Barrage, we're going to max out Cartilage buildup to get more procs to that, and then we max out the usuals in Demonic Presence and Ominous Aura. Extra points can go kind of wherever you want. I put them in Bone Fragments just for like any additional single target on tanky rares, and so that I can get a little bit of synergy with this, as it has a synergy there. The trees for Bone Storm and Bone Fragments are just the same as the single target build, and the Bone Storm is the same as the single target and AoE build. Those are the only things you're really doing anything with. As I said before, Blood Bolts, the Blood Wave, I have that on every build just for extra juice. I always have Mana Shield, and I always have Mana Devour. I don't see any reason not to spend these points here, as these are just too powerful for you, unless you really just don't take damage or don't feel like you need to avoid damage. So let's talk a little bit about the abilities, how they look, how they work. We'll go ahead and we're going to start with single target because that's what we went over. So single target, the idea here is that you're going to get up inside of a target and you're going to shotgun it. One thing you need to make sure that you always have is Bone Storm active, or your damage is going to be terrible. One of the reasons you want to have Bone Storm active is because it helps with cartilage buildup, and it does your main shreds, meaning you're missing an insane amount of more damage modifiers if you don't have this on. You'll feel it instantly when you don't. This resets every time you zone somewhere. Keep that in mind and try not to accidentally turn it off, as you can do that. So what you do on a target is when I'm fighting a boss or single target, I throw down my Blood Wave for the buff, I turn on Bone Storm, and then I immediately just start holding down my button. And you just start spiking and blasting and blasting and blasting and blasting. It does really good damage. You'll see the damage down there and you're like, oh, 2 billion, that's great. Well, it's because I delayed a little bit. If we actually look at the real damage I do here, it's significantly higher. This is with relatively attainable gear. I'm sitting at roughly 4 billion single target. Yeah, that's our base damage there. Now, if you are lucky enough on trade to get something like overloaded dice, I'll just show this off really quick. This is probably insanely expensive, but you saw my damage was about 4 billion there. Let's go ahead and look at what it's like if I actually have that overloaded dice on. You can see it literally is over double my damage. Overloaded dice is one of the most powerful items ever added to herosiege, especially for classes like Demonspawn. The reason for that is because not only does it add a point to everything here, it adds an additional point to the main augment, meaning you gain even more overall damage for your ability. So keep that in mind when looking at overloaded dice. This could be applied to things like your AoE trees as well if you want better clear. So we'll talk about Blood Surge next. Blood Surge was what I used for the majority of our leveling up, and we didn't use Celestials and Shadow Beacon, but we can. And I'll kind of show you what this ability looks like, as well as just kind of how the damage feels. I turned my opacity up, and you're going to see really quickly why I had it down so much. This will be coming off of every mob you're hitting and will be a lot. This is about a 1 billion AoE right now. I haven't applied any like burn effects. What you can do here is you can use a Molten Paw because you do have crit on this. Molten Paw can apply a burn effect usually, and that burn effect will key up your damage. If you don't have a Molten Paw or you don't want to rely on the crit of this, what you can do is you can actually just take that little chance of burning and it'll give you a pretty good modifier. But this is mostly a clear ability, and you can see it feels really nice. You could probably see what this would be like on a huge pack of monsters. It does good damage, and this is with the Blood of Abaddon staff, which is just a really good item. Mine's not even that well rolled on the Blood Surge, but it gives me a crazy amount of damage and carried me all the way through Hell 5 farming. You can do this with something like Celestials and Shadow Beacon, and you might end up seeing higher damage in some cases. For me, I probably won't because Blood of Abaddon is just that powerful, but Blood Surge is a great ability to clear with, and if I was over-geared for Inferno, it's what I'd probably use. Now, the ability I do currently use to clear Inferno is Bone Barrage with Bone Nova. The reason for that is this ability is just a crazy outward Nova. It gives me a ton of damage. I can also double up on Bone Storm here to kind of just get a little bit of extra break. But the damage is extremely good, it's extremely good range, it bounces around all over the place, and it just feels really good to use. Early on, when you're progressing into actual Inferno clearing, this will actually help your frames a bit over Blood Surge and can sometimes do a lot more damage because it's not as reliant on the chaining or the critting or the ticks. The damage on this is just raw and from the cartilage buildup procs, which you'll get really quickly with all the chaining between monsters. Now, something that's a little unattainable and I didn't want to mention is the Phelps Ring. If you have the Phelps Ring, you actually vastly increase what you can do with this ability, as now all these projectiles return, and you can see how much that did for my damage. I was hovering around 1.5 to 2 billion before, I'm now sitting at around 5 billion. That's because every single projectile I fire out is now larger, does more damage, and returns to me, while hitting all the targets and multiplying the amount of stacks I get from cartilage buildup. This makes this probably our best clear ability in the game, though Blood Surge is still faster if you get enough damage to kill things in Inferno, which isn't always going to be the case given how tanky some of those mobs can be. When I was playing Blood Surge in Inferno, I found a lot of rares living too long. With this ability, not so much. This ring, however, has a angelic drop chance. It is extremely rare and extremely expensive on trade. I assume I haven't played trade. That's our 3 setups. I like Blood Surge for farming Hell, I like Bone Nova for farming Inferno, and I like the single target this build. Honestly, this is the best clearing and best single target I've experienced in a caster. It is so good, and Mana Shield genuinely makes you very tanky. 64% at my current level of damage is getting taken, 62%, sorry, is getting taken from mana before health, meaning I do still have to run a health bot, but I'm able to ignore most damage and just restore my mana with Harvest, or because it clips that, I don't get 1 tap by most things. It makes you very tanky, especially if you look at the super end game of this build, which is mana stacking. And I will say all of this and all this damage you've seen, I really don't have that great of charms, and I did most of this without having my overloaded dice in or anything like that. Like I have a Damien's Cage, a Traveler's, I have a 2 Demonspawn, a Witch's Claw. The rest of this is like life. Soul Collector is an amazing item. Most of the stuff is just like life and mana charms. I still have a lot of my mana charms on for my mana stack setup. This isn't even ideal charms. So how do you level this character? It's pretty straightforward. All you need is a filter looking for the specific arcane caster things. You want flat arcane skill damage, all skills, arcane skills, ignore arcane resistance, and faster cast rate, though you won't need faster cast rate right away. What you also want is a little bit of mana on kill. Now, when you're leveling the Demonspawn at first, you don't need as much mana on kill, and you don't need as much faster cast rate because you'll be leveling primarily with Bone Storm, but once you hit 40 or Nightmare, you will need it. Let's talk about the leveling tree. So how do we level a Demonspawn? Well, for the first 8 levels, it kind of sucks. You're going to go with Impale, and the first level Impale basically does no damage. You're going to feel terrible while going through the tutorial. Once you get to level 2, it starts to pop off. As you start getting items with int on them, maybe a little flat arcane skill, you start to really blast. You're going to get this all the way up until you hit level 8 and can unlock Bone Storm. Then you're going to reset your skills. You're going to put 1 point in Bone Fragments, 1 point in Bone Storm. Probably going to want to grab yourself Mana Shield, as it will be just nice to have. And once you get an extra point, you could put it in Ossification, but you won't have enough skill points yet. So I'd wait till you have more plus all skills for this. So what you then do is you just start pumping Bone Storm and maxing it, and you want to just slowly prog through Bone Storm. The first thing you're going to do, you're just going to cap this out, because this is all your damage. Bone Storm will carry you all the way through normal and into Nightmare with extreme ease. Once this is capped out, go ahead and get a chance to bleed and then start moving into this. But by the time you get to here, you're going to be level 40 and we're going to be looking at swapping. But you can just keep upping this and kill Mevius with this and clear it. If you hit 40 beforehand, you can take a point out of here, go ahead and move here and start getting cycloning bones. That's totally fine if you want to kill Mevius with Bone Storm. That's basically how you level. You can also do bone fragments as well for bossing. Have this because Bone Storm is a static passive effect that just happens around your character when you cast it. Once you've casted it, you can cast other spells. Just keep it up at all times. But if you have bone fragments, just up the proj, go in here, get yourself a little more extra proj. Just progress through these, get yourself more damage. Or get bloodshed. So on bosses, you just stand on them with Bone Nova and just spam bone fragments at them. Spamming mana pots to keep your mana up from the cost of this. Once you hit level 40, or more so once you hit Nightmare, as honestly Bone Storm's fun to play, just go through normal with it. But that is kind of your core leveling ability. You're just going to go through that with Bone Storm. As you gain levels, you're going to grab a point in Ominous Aura, just so you have that extra arcane damage. You're going to grab a point in Demonic Presence over here, a little more extra. You'll pick up Mana Devour as soon as you can, just 1 point in these. Once you max Bone Storm, then you can start maxing some of your arcane damage, just to get more damage out. Definitely put a point in Cartilage buildup the second you can. That's a really big modifier for you, as it's just extra arcane damage every time Bone Storm's hitting and you're spamming bone fragments. Leveling on this character is some of the easiest I've experienced. You do have to get up close and personal though, which is a disadvantage at times. That's where Mana Shield can come in handy. So always try to keep a good mana pot in your inventory. Check your vendors every act. Keep an eye out for solid low-level arcane satanics. There's some really good early things you can pick up. Anything with plus all skills is going to help you massively because it also increases Ominous Aura as well as Demonic Presence, further increasing your damage. Now, once you are in Nightmare, we want to do a little bit of a swap, as running face first into things no longer becomes as viable. Your resistances are mostly completely screwed. Your health is still kind of low. You probably have bad gear, and monsters just do way more damage. So what do? Let's look at our tree here. We're going to get Ossification. We're going to get Ominous Aura. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into Blood Surge. You're going to get 1 point in Blood Tendrils. You're going to get your Demonic Presence. You're going to get your usual mana things here. And we'll go over here and we'll just get this Bone Storm point. And this is strictly for what we talked about in the earlier tree. So what do we do with Blood Surge? You'd think maybe you follow the setup I have for endgame. That's not true. We're going to do a completely different setup for what matters. So what matters at first is just raw damage and break. So how do we handle that? We're going to go here, here, and here. The first thing we're maxing is Arcane Break. You're only going to have about 6 or 7 points when you get to this point, unless you've over leveled beyond 40. So what you're going to do is just focus it all on here, max that out, and then max your AoE. What you need to keep in mind is Blood Surge is entirely for clear. You're literally just using it to kill things as you go through the zones. It's not for bosses. Once you get these two maxed, you start moving up towards this node. That's what you care about. But we're not taking an augment. No, you don't need one. Tick frequency isn't really good until level 100, and most of these augments aren't going to help you that much. I just prefer doing this. This was really effective. It got me literally all the way through hell just running this. And as I went on, I maxed this out. I did a little bit of movement diminish to be faster, kind of similar to what you'd see in the tree moving over. And then I started moving into the crit. You could also just take a point here and drop it in a chance to inflict burning. Not super likely you're going to inflict burning at a 3% chance, but hey, you actually might, and then you get a 20% damage modifier. Once you've maxed out Blood Surge and Blood Tendrils, you're just going to start maxing out things like Ominous Aura and Demonic Presence. Both of them increase your arcane damage at the same rate, but so just pick whichever one you want. I personally like Ominous Aura. Now, what do we do about single target? Well, you have 2 trees available to you for free on your characters, so one of them is going to be this Blood Surge tree. The other is going to be what we just talked about, which is bone fragments. This tree, you actually can just copy my endgame tree for the most part. There's no reason you can't. What you just need to make sure of is that you rush the Everlasting Storm, so you have to worry about turning it on, and that you rush over to getting this node in bone fragments. And then you can start working out the rest of the tree as you go. I definitely suggest getting bleed damage really quickly, but proj is pretty crazy too. Kind of you could just swap between these as you level up, but really Blood Surge and bone frags, that's all you're running as you level. Grab your point and your blood bolts and blood wave as you're leveling. Once you hit 40, it's just free movement speed and damage. Pretty straightforward. Leveling up, I suggest splitting a little bit in Vit and Int. I would say maybe try to drop 8 to 10 points in energy, especially early when you don't have a lot of mana or mana on your gear. Keep an eye out for mana on charms, as it's a really good place to pick it up without affecting your gear's damage. So gear that I'm currently wearing is gear that you could clear all of Inferno with pretty easily. I could even swap these belts out and still do the same thing. This is just kind of a bonus. I have been able to do all content in the game with this gear, and I do think some of this gear is extremely good, but I don't think it's impossible to obtain. Though unfortunately, some of it does require Inferno, mostly the Arcanus and the belt, but you can swap things out. I did all the stuff in Inferno with 2 Iron Rings of Prometheus, and ideally you could also farm a Soulforge ring in a slot there. So piece by piece, Beacon the Shadow is just one of the best weapons you can get for one-handers. Comes from Uber Reaper. Great cast rate, great all skills. Energy is really helpful to have high mana. Up to 3 sockets to give you pristine amethyst and extra additive arcane skill damage, which is extremely powerful for us. Best chess piece in the game for arcane casters, in my opinion, because it gives you Arcane Wrath, which allows you to get Shadow Burn on targets, which allows you to activate Arcane Roamers if you move into those later on. This has everything we want on it for gear. It has pen, it has arcane, it has all skills, it has arcane damage, it has sockets, it has all res, it's int converted to damage attributes. There's just hands down the best chest in the game. I like Monstrosity. You could also go with Spellslinger for an augment if you want more consistency. I think Monstrosity scales a little better, especially with how fast we stack and how much we hit. Specialist Authority is hands down probably one of the best shields in the game for this build, just based on its roles. You get all res, you get negative enemy res, you get maximum arcane res, which helps for boss fights like Luna, you get raw arcane damage, int, and Celestial Might's always nice for any conversion you need. It's just a good shield. It's got 4 sockets. You can put whatever you want in it. You're going to start out probably with Amethyst like I did, and then maybe later on you're going to move into the Angel Gem and the Chaos Gems. Pendant of Eternity, I find it's a struggle to find any neck better than this, considering what the proc up is 86% faster cast rate. There is so few things you could even consider being better than this. It also comes with magic skill damage. We don't really care about the skill haste, but magic skill damage is crazy. Pearlescent Dream is probably the best thing you're going to find prior to getting yourself a pair of arcane roamers, because it is all res, it is magic find, it is energy, it is jumping power, and it is holy aura. Now, once you do get arcane roamers, if you have enough res to put those on to give you that huge boost of damage from shadow burn effectiveness and the 4 sockets, you put these on your merc and the holy aura will still affect you if you're in range of your merc and have your merc alive. So you still get the effect of the holy aura, which is really nice. But these double dip, and that holy aura is crazy damage. A level 24 holy aura is currently giving me 60% magic skill damage. Gloves, Zealot's Deathbringer are kind of our ideal endgame. Until you can get a really well roll of these, Arcanum Asphyxiators are good. These are very close to Arcanum Asphyxiators. They just have better cast rate and better arcane skill damage, but overall they have about the same plus skills, except Arcanums have plus all on them. What pulls these ahead is the 2 sockets and the fact that they can get higher ratios of cast rate and arcane skill damage. These are just definitively too strong to not have. Rings, like I said before, Iron Ring of Prometheus is really good. I just have this equipped right now in this setup because I don't have a better ring. I think if I was going to keep going with the raw arcane setup and not deviate to the high end, I would probably get a Soulforge ring here. And then obviously your other ring would be Arcanus. You could also put like a St. Aaron's if we're talking like giga investment. But really, Iron Rings of Prometheus are really strong. You could also get a well-rolled like high plus arcane skills mythic ring with cast rate on it. That would also be really good. Belt, I like Girdle of Eternal War with arcane on it. I got a really good roll on this one. The 2 sockets are extremely powerful, but you can also get away with a Rules. It gives you a ton of defensive stats and all attributes. And helmet, I have Sight of the Gods because I crave to have teleport. However, there are a lot of other options. Early on, you're probably going to use like a Witch's Brimmed hat until you have more arcane cap with your relics and everything. But you could also use a Gaze of the Oblivion, which is a crazy good helmet, especially with good rolls on it and up to 4 sockets. It's got buffed and is just really, really good. Flasks, you're ideal here. You definitely want a Wizard Potion. Elixir of Death is really good. If you want to use a vodka, that's always good, though it can cause a little funkiness with Mana Shield by applying too high of a rank, so you can't reapply it until it wears off. You do still need to run a health potion, and you could opt to run a mana potion here just to not have to stop and cast Harvest every time you take damage during a boss fight, or in case the boss fight goes on long enough and you're spamming your mana. You can use a mana pot. It could also use caffeinated coffee here. You could use a ghostly potion. I think this is really good. Caffeinated coffee requires you to apply burning, which means you got to spec into Impale, which I just didn't feel like doing because it's an extra button. Charms, I have currently like not that great of charms. I do have a really good Demonspawn charm here and Soul Collector, which are crazy. We won't talk about this charm just yet, but I also have just like life and mana charms, a life charm, Witch's Claw, Traveler's Journal, Damien's Cage you're gonna wear forever. It's just good. Ideally, you know, late game charms, Arcane Pumpkin, Fulgi, Taurustines. I just haven't seen those. This charm is going to be one of the most expensive charms on trade, especially after I make this video. This literally doubles your damage on single target. The amount of damage this gives is obscene. I'll show a demonstration probably at the end of the video here, but this will excel your single target so high it's ridiculous. This is probably the most powerful item ever added to herosiege for some classes. My preference is Lost Wand. I like the extra energy. Cast speed is super good. Arcane Globe, just kind of a given. Arcane skills and damage. Holy Bible has attributes and all skills. Enemy arcane res with Orb of Chaos, and then we have Magic Mushroom. Early on when I'm gearing, I do like having a Triforce though, though I do replace it pretty quickly once I get my res up there, and relic zones make that pretty easy. 5th relic slot is unlocked from the quest for killing Amon-Ra and Gabriel, so then you can opt to put, I would put a rock belt here instead. I just didn't find one, and since I have teleport, movement speed doesn't mean much to me. Something you could also do here instead is Shade of Death, which at max level actually reduces your movement diminish on skills by 100%. That's it for our basic setup as far as going through Inferno. When we're talking about high investment, however, high investment would be Mana Stack. Mana Stack, however, needs 3 items. You need a Grand Archwizard's Mantle, a Book of Cold Death, and a Celestial's Authority. I would change my relics probably to a spoon somewhere. I'd probably have more mana-centric charms. I'd have more mana-centric gear. I'd put like Sur Runes in these. You know, probably Sur Runes in my Celestials. I'm getting there, but we'll see as I transition what I do. But these items cause you to gain an obscene amount of damage. This is probably like a 200 to 300% damage increase in a lot of situations. However, this item is not realistic, so I can't suggest it as, hey, just go get this item. The last time I asked someone on trade what this costs, it was like 48 million gold. If you drop one, congratulations, you're either super rich or you're super broken. This allows me to essentially do somewhere between 20 and 30 billion DPS depending on the target, which is significantly higher than I can do without it. It also makes me very tanky because there's more mana that needs to be beat through before my mana is worn out and my health starts getting targeted or my mana shield wears off. Very strong ability, very strong item. However, I can't just suggest it as part of the guide. So if you're uber rich or you have one of these, congratulations, you get into high-end mana stacking. You probably get a Sheep King's Crown up here with Sur Runes in it. You probably wear 2 Premonitions or Arcanus. I did 2 Premonitions and didn't notice much of a difference between that and Arcanus. Throw Sur Runes in a Grot of War, 2 Sur Runes in a Zealot's Deathbringers. Probably grab yourself some Chaos Walkers and throw 4 Sur Runes into those. Just get as much mana as you can and you'll do crazy damage. But this is extreme next level high investment. You don't need this. It makes you so strong that everything in the game dies instantly. If that's what you want to aim for on Demonspawn, be my guest. It's been a lot of fun. I like carrying 4-player Inferno Lunas with it. It's a lot of fun to do, but it is very, very hard to obtain. But that's been Demonspawn, a very fun class with a lot of damage, good clear, good single target, good survivability, a lot of cool aesthetics, and a lot of fun things to do. I highly suggest this class, even if you're a beginner. It's one of the better casters in the game, in my opinion. I've played it multiple seasons now, and I've never been disappointed by what it's capable of. Let me show you how powerful overloaded dice are, as I promised I would. Go ahead and look at just regular loaded dice. See some cast speed on them, and just regular +2. That way there's not much of a differential. Let's go ahead and proc attack speed or cast speed really quick. There we go. We got that up. So now let me show you what kind of damage we do just basically here. There's a boss dummy, so we get good damage here. This is my damage. This is your single target damage, shotgunning a boss on this build. You can see my mana's running out, but I can just hit harvest like once or twice and we go back up. Mana pot's good there. Yeah, you can see the damage is really good. We're sitting at like 4.5 billion. This is my single target damage in this gear. As I said, you can kill every Inferno boss in the game with this. Okay, so that's the normal setup right now. We're going to clear this. Let's go ahead and put these dice on. And now let me go ahead and show you how powerful these dice actually are. Let's see what kind of damage we have now. As you can see, we are skyrocketing past, quite significantly so. So, as I said, they practically double your damage, if not a little more. The funny thing, too, is the more damage you do and the more raw damage you have, the more multiplicative damage you're gaining. So in the mana setup, I actually gain almost 150% extra damage from this setup because of how it works. That's how powerful these dice are. It's one item to actually fully double your single target. They're very expensive on trade, and I imagine they're only going to get more expensive. Anyway, I'm Sleepy Cat, and I'm tired. Good night.